This is the story of Enrico Riccobene, also known as Ricky Riccobene. There's not that much documentation of Enrico Riccobene. However, based on our sources, we will go over as much as we can based on his life. Enrico Riccobene was the beloved son of Mario and Angelina Riccobene. He had a sister named Karen. He also had an uncle named Robert Riccobene and grew up in the South Philadelphia region. And a lot of his family relatives, the ones that we mentioned, especially the men, were reported mobsters in the Philadelphia community. Harry the Hunchback Riccobene dated back until the glory days of the mob during the reign of Salvatore Sabella, the first Philadelphia godfather that has been reported throughout many historians. Therefore, the Riccobene family had several ties to many different mobsters throughout several decades, especially with Harry the Hunchback and Robert Riccobene. Enrico Riccobene, as you can see, this is one of the only few photos we are able to obtain of him. As you can see, he has this similar look of the Hollywood actor from Back to the Future, Crispin Glover, with the very long hair, as you can see from the photo comparisons. We don't have much description of his personality, but we'll go over it as much depth and detail as possible. He was a young entrepreneur and had his own business in the Jeweler Rose down in the center city of Philadelphia. But unfortunately, he will have a very tragic fate as a result of the whole Philadelphia crime fairy era, as we'll go over the whole backstory between the Scarfo and Riccobene faction. His new boss was Philip Chicken Man Testa, who was Angelo Bruno's successor, but Chicken Man will be killed in an explosion from a bomb that was placed under his porch. Philip Testa was killed less than a year since Bruno's death. The Philadelphia crime family loses two godfathers less than 2 years. Therefore, the commission, the bosses of the 5 families in New York, will honor and choose Nicky Scarfo as the godfather of Philadelphia. Nicky Scarfo would reach the pinnacle of his career. Everyone knew the more powerful Nicky Scarfo became, the more paranoid and destructive he would be amongst anyone who crossed paths, including his own son, Mark Scarfo, be to recruit him into the mafia. However, Mark Scarfo would refuse his father's offers, which would rub Nicky Scarfo the wrong way, but he had bigger fish to fry. Nicky Scarfo and his entourage would improvise a street tax to all criminals to pay a percentage of their earnings to the Scarfo crime family for running any illegal activities. If anyone refused to pay Scarfo's entourage, they would be marked for death. Nicky Scarfo would make the sign of a gun. He would shape his hand like a gun as a calling card to notify his entourage that someone was marked for death, and they would take care of it. Therefore, Nicky Scarfo would lead his entourage into a killing spree. He enjoyed the headlines of the victims he wanted to kill. He enjoyed to smile in front of the cameras while being arrested, and he immersed fear into the criminal underworld. On the other hand, not everyone shared his vision. His own criminal family feared him, along with his own biological family. Mark Scarfo would see his father get arrested numerous times. He would be teased again due to all the negative publicity. He would see and hear all the tragic stories that would surround him and his family. His father would publicly go to war with his arch nemesis, Harry the Hunchback Riccobene, because he refused to pay the street tax. Therefore, Scarfo made the sign of the gun for his men to mark Riccobene for death. Nicky Scarfo and Harry the Hunchback were both incarcerated for other criminal charges. Therefore, the leaders will orchestrate their war behind bars. Scarfo would travel to Philadelphia and meet with the captains left over from the Bruno and Testa regimes to discuss the family's new hierarchy. Nicky Scarfo would name his close friend Salvatore Chucky Molino as his new underboss, and Testa loyalist Frank Monte to the post of consigliere. Me, Chucky, and Lawrence were the only ones who knew what Pete Casella had told the Chin. This is Vincent the Chin Gigante. About the plot to kill Phil Testa. My uncle was afraid if Salvi knew, who was Philip the Chicken Man Testa's son, if Salvi knew, or even Frank Monte, they would kill Chicky Narducci immediately. My uncle says, we're gonna kill him. We're just gonna not kill him yet. Scarfo decided to send his consigliere Frank Monte and the treacherous Raymond Long John Mortorano to see Harry's younger brother Mario, Sonny Riccobene. Within the order from Scarfo that Sonny helped in setting up to his brother to be killed, the move backfired. Instead of joining the assault against his brother, Sonny Riccobene went to his brother and warned him of the pending plot to kill him, and who was involved. The Hunchback's response was loud and left little doubt that he was no more willing to go toe-to-toe with little Nicky. Now we're going to show you another way the story's been told, and this is from George Anastasia's point of view. So please understand that this may be a little redundant, but here's a little bit of different depths of how George Anastasia builds the story. According to George Anastasia's Blood and Honor book, Scarfo, whose connections in Atlantic City had helped forge allies with members of the powerful Genovese and Gambino crime families in New York, had outmaneuvered Casella and Narducci. By the end of March 1981, word once came down to the Philadelphia from New York, Nicodemo, Little Nicky Scarfo, was the new boss. Scarfo named Salvatore Molino his underboss, and Frank Monte was appointed consigliere. For those who may not be familiar about the hierarchical structure, many people pay attention to the mob boss, who is the number 1 position. The underboss is the number 2 position, and the third boss is the consigliere. While consigliere may be positioned at number 3, they themselves are known for giving more advice to the main boss, number 1, than the actual number 2. They serve a very pivotal role and have ways of trying to convince the serving boss of what their advice is, or other people in lower rankings. That is the position of the consigliere, whereas the underboss is like the vice president. They're just a sitting position to wait their turn if they ever need to appoint or step in as the new boss for a temporary or permanent time. In April, after several attempts to ambush Harry Riccobene had failed, Scarfo decided on a more insidious form of treachery, and he sent his consigliere Frank Monte and Raymond Long John Mortorano, then a suspect in the John McCullough murder, to see if Harry's half-brother Mario, Sonny Riccobene. Mario knew Long John. They both were in the methamphetamine business. What Mortorano and Monte proposed was that Mario to set up his half-brother up. Mario listened, and he said he'd get back to them. And then when he went back to his brother Harry, and that said, Nick the Crow Caramondi, was what forced the Riccobene War out in the open. For the next year and a half would rage on the streets of South Philadelphia. Harry Riccobene had been cautious and suspicious of Scarfo. He had hoped to avoid open warfare. It was only after Monte and Mortorano tried to co-opt his brother and Riccobene decided to act. Once Mario Riccobene was approached, he had just 2 options. He could either set up his brother, or, like his brother, he could become a target. At this point, Scarfo had backed the Riccobenes into a corner. It's them or us, Harry Riccobene told his brother. It's either kill or be killed. Let's get them before they get us. Mario Riccobene's answer was delivered to Frank Monte, a service station in southwest Philadelphia, on May 13th, by Joseph Padula and Victor DeLuca, two Riccobene associates. Padula was lying in ambush in a camper mounted on the back of a small pickup truck. The truck was parked across the street from the service station where Monte had left his car. Padula had a .22 caliber rifle with a telescope sight. DeLuca and another associate waited in a bar nearby. Shortly after 9 p.m., Monte showed up in his car. Padula got him in his sight and squeezed the trigger, and squeezed again, and squeezed again, and squeezed again. Monte, 49, was shot 5 times in the back and head. There were also bullet wounds in his left hand, right arm, and upper right arm. The mob consigliere had $600 in cash in his pocket when police found him lying semi-conscious in the streets near the gas station at 9:30 that night. He was pronounced dead a half hour later. Monte's name was near the top of that hit list drawn up by the Riccobenes after Mario was approached that spring and asked to set up his brother. The Riccobenes, in turn, were on top of that list prepared by Scarfo and his henchmen. For the rest of 1982 and all of 1983, squads of gunmen cruised through the streets of South Philadelphia looking for targets.
Only 3 of the alleged co-conspirators were in court today. Alleged La Casa Nostra faction leader Harry Riccobene, plus Vincent Isabella and Joseph Casdia. Victor DeLuca remains at Graterford Prison for other crimes. Mario Riccobene is in a Connecticut prison. They'll all be brought in late April when the preliminary hearing finally comes off. Judge Mitchell Lipschutz continued the case because of the 2 absent defendants and the questions about possible conflicts of interest for defense lawyer Charles Peruto Jr., who now represents Harry Riccobene, but who in the past did some defense work for the DA's star witness, Joseph Padula, the convicted organized crime triggerman who has turned informant. Padula is ready to finger the other defendants in all of this with conspiracy or attempting to murder at least 5 of Philadelphia's top reputed mob figures, including Nicodemo Scarfo and Salvatore Testa. In May 1982, Frank Monte, a leading mob figure, was murdered. Salvatore Testa was critically wounded in the summer of '82. Assistant District Attorney Arnold Gordon outlined the case they plan to prove.
In connection with that conspiracy, they surveilled the movements of Frank Monte and Raymond Martirano, that Isabella supplied the men with a .45 caliber machine gun, 22 caliber rifle with a scope, other guns, that on the day of Frank Monte's killing, Monte was watched by Harry Riccobene, Joseph Casdia, Victor DeLuca, and Joseph Padula, and that eventually Padula shot Monte about 8 times as he returned to his automobile. That Casdia drove the camper from which Padula had shot away from the scene of the shooting.
He is pleading not guilty, he is not guilty, and a time will come when all of that will out.
You don't believe Padula can finger him?
It's my belief that Padula is intending to do that. Whether or not a jury will believe Padula is the important factor here to be considered.
The explosive testimony of mob hitman Joseph Padula is now due to be heard in open court on April 24th. At that time, all the defendants will be in court to face their accuser, who was once their alleged co-conspirator and triggerman. Vernon Odom, Channel 6 Action News at City Hall.
can't believe it, man.
When we went to the back, we saw her trying to grab at the figure that was on the ground of her, I guess her son or whatever it was, and we could see, looking in the yard beside it, broken off shotgun.
Sawed-off shotgun?
Sawed-off shotgun.
Driver hadn't gotten in yet.
Philadelphia homicide detectives say Robert Riccobene was bringing his mother home from a shopping trip at about 10 o'clock last night. 73-year-old Jean Riccobene is Harry the Hunchback Riccobene's stepmother and was living in Harry's southwest Philadelphia home while he serves time in a federal prison on a racketeering conviction. As Jean Riccobene and her son Robert got out of this blue car last night, police say the Riccobenes saw two men approach them with a sawed-off shotgun. The Riccobenes apparently tried to flee, but the gunman caught up with them in a next-door neighbor's backyard. At that point, neighbors tell me they heard a shot ring out. Dolores Pisano tells me she came outside when she heard Jean Riccobene's screams.
I said to her, "Can I help you in any way?" And she says, "No, my son, he's shot. And then I heard her say to the policeman then finally came, and she said to the police, "Please help me." She says, I tried to catch him. I stopped him from shooting him, but he wouldn't stop. He just shot him anyhow, dropped the gun and ran.
Officials say Robert Riccobene was shot at close range in the back of the head. His mother was slightly injured when the butt of the shotgun hit her in the face. Investigators believe this is just one more incident in the mob war that began when Angelo Bruno was murdered. Certain law enforcement officials tell Action News this hit was not unexpected. Riccobene was warned, in fact, that his life was in danger. I'm Robin Garrison.
Scarfo and Riccobene street soldiers were killing each other in the streets, causing mayhem and violence that pedestrians and civilians fear for their own safety. One civilian who certainly feared for his life was Harold Riccobene's nephew, Enrico Riccobene. Enrico Riccobene owned his own jewelry store in Jewelers Row in Philadelphia, and he had nothing to do with the mafia. However, he carried the name Riccobene, and therefore he was targeted behind enemy lines. Mark's uncle, Philip Leonetti, Salvatore Salvi Testa, and Lawrence Molino arrived at Jewelers Row. It was around Christmas time, and Leonetti was looking for a watch for his girlfriend. The gang would notice that Enrico Riccobene was running one of the jewelry stores. Enrico Riccobene made sure that the doors were locked so that customers needed to be buzzed in to get accessed. When Leonetti and Testa tapped onto the window, Enrico Riccobene realized who these mafia soldiers were, and he panicked. The street soldiers would glare through the window and continuously banged on the door. For this reason, Enrico walked to the back of the store where he could not be seen. He saw and picked up a loaded gun. At this moment, Enrico Riccobene refuses to point the gun at the gang members. Instead, he points the gun at his own head and he shot himself. He died on the scene. The tragic death of Enrico Riccobene would send shockwaves to the Riccobene family and the world that was watching, including Mark Scarfo, based on the news you will see here.
Enrico Riccobene killed himself right after he saw Philip staring at him through a store window. And when Pat the cat failed to show up for a hit, Nicky made sure Pat took the fall and...
Jewelers Row was bustling with holiday business today, but merchants on the block remained jumpy. This closed jewelry store was a reminder of yesterday's suicide by 27-year-old Enrico Riccobene, the nephew of reputed mob figure Harry Riccobene, whose faction is currently at war with other segments of South Philadelphia's trigger-happy underworld. Police sources tell me that Enrico, who owned this store, the place where he shot himself yesterday afternoon, had no apparent business connections with the crime syndicate. But police sources tell me Enrico was frightened and had been told by lawmen as well as mob figures that he was a potential target for a hit. Just 9 days ago, his uncle Robert Riccobene known by police to be involved in mob gambling activities, was assassinated. Enrico Riccobene's father, Mario, and Mario's brother, Harry, are in prison now. And though Enrico is said to be clean, his bloodline apparently made him a marked man. Few merchants would talk about the latest Riccobene to die.
He seemed like a gentleman and a young man minding his own business, and that's all I can say at this time. I don't want to say too much more.
The theory by authorities is this guy was intimidated to death, that he operated a clean business.
I wouldn't know anything about his business.
Police are certain that the pressure, stress, and danger of being a Riccobene these days was too much for Enrico, even if his business was not the business that made other members of his family so infamous. Vernon of Channel 6 Action News on Jewelers Row.
Harry Riccobene was very devastated, distraught, and depressed over the news of his nephew and other members, including his own brother, Robert Riccobene. His raw emotions caused and convinced him to surrender in the war, and Nicky Scarfo was declared the winner, and his prizes will be Harry Riccobene's assets and lucrative operations. Around this time, Scarfo was elated about the tragedies and was being released from prison, as you can see here. He was free, lucrative, and a cheerful man. However, in the life of the mob, happiness is very short-lived. As a result of the tragedy, Enrico Anthony Riccobene lost his life at the age of 27. We will also show you his obituary that's been listed on the reported news from the Philadelphia Inquirer. And as we also mentioned, Nicky Scarfo's son, Mark Scarfo, would share a similar fate like Enrico Riccobene. He too, who also dealt with the pressures of being affiliated with the mobsters, tried to take his own life. He did survive, however, he was in a coma for the rest of his life and would tragically lose it in the most recent years and never get out of his coma until he succumbed to his injuries. Therefore, this will also lead a tragic story of those taking their own lives, even though they were not part of the whole mafia. It goes to show you how tragic the fate of how it surrounds families and broken homes. Nicky Scarfo and Enrico Riccobene will one day share the same fate of dying in prison after both of them have faced several RICO charges and be sentenced to prison for the rest of their lives. Each of them will lose a family member of taking their own lives and will lose friends and family members as a result of their faction of war. Enrico's father, Mario's son Riccobene, would outlive the war. However, he became an informant and turned against his own brother, Harry the Hunchback Riccobene. After convicting his own brother in jail and was able to walk free, he did miss the style of the life. When he decided to go back into his old criminal days, the criminal underworld has no short-term memory, as you can see here based on these reports.
It happened at about 7:10 last night. Patrons of the Brooklawn Diner noticed a car in the parking lot, its engine racing red hot and smoke pouring from it.
Nobody wanted to go really up close because the car was like smoking and making a lot of noise.
And the underneath of it was red? Like
it was red. It was red because the guy's foot was in the accelerator. So I don't know how long he was in there.
Inside the station wagon was the body of a man, his head bent forward. He had been shot in the head. Bullet casings were found at the scene, and today investigators returned to search for the gun, but none was found. The man's driver's license was reportedly issued in North Carolina. Police have a tentative identification, but have not yet released it. And then I thought, well, I guess I know where 60-year-old Mario Sonny Riccobene, a one-time member of the Bruno Scarfo organized crime family, has been identified as the man murdered last night in the parking lot of the Brooklawn Diner. Riccobene had been shot several times in the head as he sat in this parked station wagon. The driver's side window shattered by gunfire. Riccobene's foot on the accelerator, the engine running red hot.
Given the circumstances of the killing. We are obviously investigating an organized crime connection.
Riccobene had been in the Federal Witness Protection Program from 1984 until '89, when, according to the FBI, he was kicked out for habitually violating security procedures. Riccobene returned to live in rural Gloucester County with his elderly mother.
I have to tell you, my experience has been that some people in the Witness Protection Program do very foolish things.
Riccobene is the half-brother of Harry the Hunchback Riccobene, who is serving time for the 1982 murder of Frank Monte. In '84, Sonny Riccobene began cooperating with police against other mobsters, including his half-brother, and at that time entered witness protection. Last night's murder here in Brooklawn came 3 weeks after another murder in Audubon, New Jersey. In that case, a reputed West Coast gang enforcer, Rod Colombo, was shot in the head as he sat in a parked car.
We're looking at the similarities, but we have no reason other than those circumstantial similarities to think that they're connected at this point.
While Riccobene was no longer in the Federal Witness Protection Program, law enforcement officials kept tabs on him. They knew where he was. Obviously, Riccobene's enemies also knew where to find him. I'm Kathy Gandolfo, Channel 6 Action News, Camden, New Jersey.
Mauro Riccobene would be buried along with his son and his wife, as you can see here in this photo. Enrico Riccobene would pass away in December of 1983. Mauro Riccobene would pass away in the year of 1993. And Angelina, Mario's wife and Enrico's mother, would pass away in the year of 2010. And all three of these family members are buried besides each other in the whole Riccobene family plot. Alongside them will be also Harry the Hunchback Riccobene with his family members and their parents. This concludes our story on the tragic fate of Enrico Anthony Riccobene. Staying positive doesn't mean you have to be happy all the time. It means that even on hard days, you know that there are better ones coming. Due to YouTube policies, this video cannot be monetized when it comes to the subject of suicide. However, we made this video because we feel that it is crucial that people should be aware of these kind of stories and how it's impacted humanity. We do accept donations on Cash App to username. Any donation that we receive for this video will be donated to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, previously known as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Therefore, we can prevent tragedies like Mark Scarfo and Enrico Riccobene and many loved ones that we know. Suicide doesn't end the pain, it just passes it on to someone else. Please be healthy, stay safe, God bless you, and thank you for your time. We love you.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and check out more content. Feel free to give us your feedback and suggestions on who we should do next in the comments. This is Infinitely Productions. We love ya.